Morning. The Spy Who Shagged Me. No, I wasn't actually part of the culture when that movie came out, but it was a term that, nevertheless, people were using around me, and I had never heard it before. So the word shagged remind me of what Rashi's said on the verse that changes the word yishkalena to yishkavena. Why? Why would we read it differently than it's written? Because it's a euphemism. Yishkalena, says Rashi, is connected in meaning with the noun shegel. It's like shag. Shegel, a concubine. Scripture, however, paraphrases it. I think it means here to me use a euphemism by using a more decent expression vis-a-vis yishkavena. The Kri is yishkavena. You don't say it the way it's written. Good morning. Gevach. You don't say it the way it's written. It's written shagged. You say it's written yishkalena. But you say yishkavena, to lie. Not meaning to lie, but to lie. Lie down. Doesn't say yishkalena, it doesn't say shagged in the Torah. Well, it's written that way, but you don't say that when you read it. Shegel, yishkalena. You say yishkavena. This is a variation such as writers make to avoid an indecent expression. Like it looks like I'm trying to always go the other way. The Torah is going out of its way to make it as pure as possible. And I'm trying to make ridiculous associations to movies that came out when I was a teenager. But the reason why I'm doing this is to show you what role this plays in your life. And it's going to actually come up in today's Hayom Yom. Because, no, I didn't think of Austin Powers this morning when I woke up Modiani, Austin Powers. I never even watched that movie, ever. I have no idea what it's about. It sounds pretty funny if it's making fun of James Bond, because what's not to make fun of James Bond? So if someone's going to do that, it's probably pretty cute. Shagged. I never heard such a word before. Yishkalena, it sounds funny. Read it differently. Yishkavena, it's more decent that way. The Torah has a dignity about it that you don't read it the way it's actually written, but actually it's written that way. Okay, so I want to read that in the context of how it appears in today's Hayom Yom. When Daddy reads, when the Mitteler Rebbe said, about his father, the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, that when he reads it, the Torah, all the curses in the Torah sound like blessings to him. Someone else reads it, he was sick till Yom Kippur. They didn't know whether he could fast that Yom Kippur. Like at least a week later. A week and a half, 2 weeks later. Oh, no more than that even. Yom Kippur is in the 10th of the month. So, in the context of how you could hear something that appears as a curse, shagged sounds like a curse. Yishkalena. That's the way it's written. That's the fact. But what are you going to say? When you're going to communicate the idea, you're bringing out something that's more decent in this translation. Let's see what Rashi actually says. V'tikin seifrin huzeh. The seifrin, there's an ability to interpret your circumstance. The Hebrew resonates much better for me. Tikkun seifrim. You know any seifrim? I know a sefer. And I know someone whose name is Sefer, and he counts. So he's also a Sefer. He counts letters. But Tikkun Seifrin hu zeh. When you point to it, when you look at the word the way it's written, there's an interpretation that you apply to it that is meaningful in your life. So when you encounter the Torah, it does not change the way it's written. Yishkalena shagged. Or the equivalent in Aramaic in the day, if you prefer. Only Mel Gibson would make a movie in Aramaic. Like, what is the point of that? What a waste of time. Nobody speaks it anymore, so what's the point of it? What a waste of time that is. Give me the resources, Mel. Write me a check. Baruch Merkur's Ice Bucket Challenge, Anonymous. So I want to read you the way that the Rebbe understands the word pelegish in the context of this, that you don't hear any curses when the Alter Rebbe reads it. It's only blessings. Because we're going to say that the Alter Rebbe knew the inner meaning of it. So he had that in mind when he's reading it. He interprets pelegish as yishkavena. Yishkalena shagged to the Alter Rebbe. He sees the purity in shagged. The yishkalena, the Torah wouldn't write. Shegel, pelegesh. Pelegesh is made up of two words. One of them is shegel. And the other one, where does it say that? Bishana. Okay, it's not in this Rashi. Where did I read that? In Sifsei Chachamim, maybe. It's made up of two words squished together in the pelegish. The concubine is one of them is shagel. So we don't read it as that. We try and interpret it different. It's a tikkun seifrim. That becomes read as yishkavena, to lie with her. And this verse, we are told, is on par, our sages teach us, with Anechi Havaya Lukecha V'Shma Yisrael. The verse, V'Timno Haisa Pelegesh, just as important as the beginning of the Ten Commandments when God introduces himself. Wow, what a statement that is. So we're going to see the context of that unfolds in today's Hayom Yom, Yud Zayin Elul. Tonight is Chayel. Well, everyone should be in a celebratory, febrigatory mode. I hope everyone's febriging tonight and tomorrow night. And maybe I'll be blessed with the time to do that too. That would be really fun. So here we have a connection between Timnah, who was a pelegish, who teaches us something. Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson has an amazing shir on this. I wish I had time to go over it so I could summarize it for you. But it's something to the effect, I think if Rashi brings us, there's another instance, but Timnah, why can't I get that Rashi? But Timnah haisa pelegish, when he talks about Timnah, to show you that even to get close to Abraham through his dastardly son, Esav, would be worthwhile. So she marries Esav. Mazel tov. Now you sire to Rome and all of its atrocities. So that's the pelegish. To Esav. Even to be his concubine, she would be willing to give up her princess life. Just to have some connection to Abraham. So the Torah is the ability to elevate that force. Okay? So the idea that even in the most shagged aspects of the world that we encounter, that's on par with Hanechi V'Elokecha Shema Yisrael, the very foundations of our entire Torah. The most seemingly trivial word, shagged, shegel. You're going to make a tikkun sefer and interpret it differently to mean on par with the Hanechi V'Elokecha Shema Yisrael. It's meant to teach you something as important as God introducing himself and you saying, "Here I am, God," now that you introduce yourself. Shema Yisrael. Hashem, actually, that episode happened earlier. It happened with Yaakov and his children. They did that to show, they said, Shema Yisrael, listen, our Father, Yisrael. To us, God is one. I know we're not in your level. We don't just see the unity of God and everything, that we realize that there's a creation. But you know what? We're bringing that, the signature of our creation, of our Creator, is going to be realized in us, in creation itself. So, Elam is Bria, the Elam Bria, where the tribes come from, is going to now also be able to express. So Yaakov says, Baruch Shem Kol Malchus Elam Voed, Echad and Voed, exchange their letters. They have the same meaning, but one's talking about an Atzilus, one's in Bria. And Yaakov is saying, thank you, that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea that you bring what I set my life to represent in this world. You're going to take that into your world, where you thought you'd be just shepherds, and you end up with Yosef bringing you into Mitzrayim. Okay, so I want to do one or two commentaries, and then I want to do the Hayom Yoms. That's the plan. Because I found a really cool, it's a Rambam that's quoted here in the Sikha that is referenced. It quotes this Rambam. I forgot to actually Here we are. Review this part just this morning. I was reading it last night. Here it is. Okay, it's quoting this. Mine's highlighted in this book. I'm going to read it from here. So we'll get to that, but let's first look at the Rambam in its context. It's really cool. It's on the Parish Mishnais of Sanhedrin, Perek Chelek, the very cool Chelek, the Gadta of Chelek. Good morning. So I want to read you some of this because I think this is the source of the Yud Gimel Ikarim that the Rambam has, the 13 principles of faith. He enumerates them all here. This is the 8th. And it's quite long, so I'm skipping right to the middle when it talks about V'lafichach nikra machekek Ve'ein hefresh bein ubnei cham kush mitzrayim v'shem ishta me'atavel. There's no difference between verses that speak about the children of Cham, which are Cush, Ethiopia, and Mitzrayim, Egypt. V'shem ishta me'atavel. You know who Me'atavel was? V'timna haisa pelegesh. And then it mentions Timna in this verse in Genesis 36:12. V'timna haisa pelegesh Eliphaz ben Esav. V'teleg le'Eliphaz as Amalek. Where do you think Amalek came from? And somehow there's good in that? There's some point in Amalek, this evil force being in the world? What's the point of that? And we're saying that verse is on par with Aneichi V'Alukach Shema Yisrael. And I have to know the descendants of Esav's wife Ada. So this comes up in the context here. The Rambam saying, Ve'in hefresh b'nei. There's no difference between verses that speak about Cham and Cush, Ethiopia, Mitzrayim, the children of Cham, and Timna Haisa Pelagish b'nei Aneichi V'Alukach Shema Yisrael. That's this verse here that's quoted in this Hayam Yam. And then quoted here in the Rambam. This parish Mishnais. Ki akol mepi hagvura. Everything comes from the mouth of the Gvura, God himself, Besti, who's called the disciplined one, the severe. V'akol teras Hashem. It is all the Torah of God. Tmima, Torah. It's sincere, pure, k'desha, holy, emes, and true. V'zeh she'emer shekamei ela psukimas Hasipurim Meishes Sapram. And like the one who says that just like all of these verses and these stories, Moshe told them Medaite from his own mind. Hinehu etzel hachmeinu v'nevienu kefer. This person denies our sages and our prophets. Umegala panim yesir mekola kefrim. And has the audacity to say interpretations that are worse than all the heretics. As if there was a heart and a shell for the Torah. There's some parts of the Torah that you're embarrassed of, God forbid. The Rebbe wasn't embarrassed when he did this to indicate, to whistle. To Meir Avasera, I think he was Nifter. Maybe not. I'm so bad with that. Yeah. Okay. Because this is saying that there's a heart and there's a shell to the Torah. Good morning. And they're just stories here. Some people say that, and that is heresy of the worst kind. Moshe Rabbeinu is telling you he's a good storyteller. And that's like saying that Torah is not from heaven. Chamim zal hu hamamim shekol terem pi gvura chutz mi pasuk zeh shaloi amar kadosh baruch hu elameish mi piatzlei zeh ki dvar Hashem bazal. That's disgracing the Torah to say that the Moshe said one word of his own. Okay, and it goes on to say how heretical that is and how that's a principle of your faith to understand that the Torah is from Shemayim and every single word. There's no core and shell to the Torah. It's all pneumius. It's all the face. You're always facing Hashem. There's no shagging in the Torah. It's Yishkaven. Yes, it's written that way. Because in life, sometimes life treats you that way. That's what the Yom is going to teach us, what it means. It's talking about those things that appear like meant to degrade and how to overcome them by seeing the source of that experience, those degrading experiences as means to find empowerment. And it's the power of interpretations, the Tikkun Seifrim that we learned about. Okay, so that's the Rambam basically. It quotes the Gemara. Okay, so I have that source. Let me just read you that. The sages taught in a Brisa, all the verses that are written in the Torah in a coarse manner are read in a refined manner. For example, the term shall lie with her, yishkalena, Deuteronomy 28:30, this yishkalena, is read as though it is said yishkavena. You read it differently. You say lie with her as opposed to shagged, which is more refined term. The term with hemorrhoids, baphilim, is read bataherim. You make euphemisms. Hemorrhoids is called terim, the pure. That's when you want to talk about hemorrhoids. The term dove's dung, so if you're like a biologist, I suppose, or who studies dove's dung. That's hiryanim. Hiryanim. It says, beautiful, is read divyanim. Instead, you say divyanim like doves. Divyanim, how do you say doves in Hebrew? Yanim. Divyanim. Doves, divyanim. Dove's dung, divyanim. It's not hiryanim. A heart sounds like a mountain, like dunghill, is rather divyanim. Div is what? Davar, it's like reading. It's like speaking, rather. And I think the commentaries say that. The phrase to eat their own excrement, harehem, and drink their own urine, may shinehem, in Kings 2, 1827, is read with a more delicate term. So the euphemisms are ingrained in the Torah itself. To eat their own excrement, tzayatam, atam, and drink their own urine, may raglehem, the water of your legs. So that is very difficult. It's not a dinner topic. Gemara, Megillah 25b. So Rashi on the Yishkalena, on these words, says, Lashon mishkav. What does it mean? Shagged? It means to mishkav. Sheichev means to lie. Kedeksiv v'hashegel yeshevas atzlai. It's a pasuk in Nehemiah. The shegel was lying beside him. The shagged is a concubine. V'yesh mefarshim kel libasa. I don't know exactly what that means. It says like kelev. Sounds like kelev, or kelev, like a heart. I don't know. Is that the klippa lave thing? Yesh mefarshim kalvasa. It sounds like kelev. I don't know. That's Aramaic for a dog. I don't know. Pailin le'afulim lashin mefeirish hu le'gnai yiser mitcherim v'shneim ben naka. I don't think it was tehirim. I think that's a mispronunciation in the English transliteration. I think it's mitcherim. So I said, I think, as I translated as pure before, but b'shnehem beneka beis hare'i, it's talking about. In both cases, these words are talking about okay, you get the point. I don't want to ruin someone's brunch. I think this should be a brunch here. You get the point. There's an idea of euphemism deeply ingrained in the Torah. It's very important to the Torah. And I have a Malbim on the verse that I quoted there, where it says, "V'yemer li hamelach," it's Nehemiah 2:6, with the concert seated at his table. The concert is the shegel. The king said to me, I guess it's Nehemiah, "How long will you be gone, and will you return?" So it was agreeable to the king to send me, and I gave him a date. Ve'etna lo zman. Date here means time. So it calls the shegel a consort. So Malbim says, "V'yemer shi'urei Hashem melech v'shegel sheyeshvevas atzlei shneim amrulei." So that the melech tells Nehemiah, I think, she'urei, that he should arouse him, v'shegel hayeshvevas atzlei, and the consort, they translate here, the shegel that was sitting beside, I guess, Nehemiah, look it up. Shnehem amrulai, both of them told him, Kamei v'yemer avimelech pichel sar tzvoi. It's like the way they list in the Chumash. It lists Pichel and his general. V'ladas Chazal shemelech zeh hayad Darius ben Esther. The Chazal teach that this king that it's talking about here in Nehemiah was Darius, the son of Esther. I think that's really cool because he's a very interesting character, because if he's the son of Esther, he's Jewish, this Persian king. Yashleimer sheshegel hazais haisa Esther. And there are those who say that the shegel, the concubine or the consort was Esther, because she was forced into that position. She was like a tzaddik nisteris. How do you say that? She was a tzaddik nister. It calls her the shegel. Haisa Esther imai. That's what his mother was known as. Shehi meheru b'shayla zais shebezek kfar hiskim al davar ba'avasa es amma umaladta. Because she was asked. She was quick with this question in her love for her nation and in her upbringing, the nation that she emerged from, her Maladta, where she was brought up, or where she was born rather. Ad masai reitel masai telech masai tashuv, the aval eid terem hisyashev Nehemiah likvaya hazman hutav adavar lifnei malach v'yishal chani reitel amar shenatan li reshus alechas. He got permission to go on his journey. Okay, he's explaining the meaning there, but why is he asking him about the date, which is really the time? He's telling him what's his itinerary for his flight. Okay, so that was, I thought, a very cool Malbim, that we learned the whole source of this Shegel, at least in Nehemiah, is talking about Esther was the Pelegish, and this king that's talking about, Darius. And it tells you that Esther is known as a Shegel. And she was quick to do anything for the sake of her nation. Wow. For the sake, wow, I thought that was very interesting. So I had this question good morning. I had this question about Esther. We're celebrating Purim, that we're redeemed, but where's Esther? She's still in the palace. So I say, well, who's screaming at the gateway saying, I want full redemption, it's not enough, we're still subject of Achashverosh. What a dark existence that is. And look, how do we know, even though we're celebrating on the streets? Because Esther herself, the Rebbitzin herself, the daughter of the Nasi Adair, had to be a Shegel to Achashverosh himself, the embodiment of the evil king. That is really the Shir Shirim story according to the Malbim too. Interestingly, the same idea. Yael would like to hear that. So I'm going to skip around a bit. Yud Zayin Ella, look it up. It's talking about what I just told you before about who's reading from the Torah. If it says about the Klolis, what is it, 98? 7 times 7 times I don't know what. How do you get to 98? Like sevens. So, Hert zich nit kein Klolis, the Mitteler Rebbe said about his father. When father reads it, he knows how everything comes from heaven, and therefore he knows the inner meaning of all these things. When it talks about Pelegish, Shegel, talking about Esther, it's only in the most dignified terms. She did it for her nation. It's the Tikkun Seifrim that allows you the ability to see the good in people, rather than trying to get such a tasty experience from finding some dirt on somebody. Wow, mazel tov to find that. You could have found some light in them, and that's what the Torah is teaching us. Okay, so let's see it in the context. So in one of the Sichas, the Rebbe explained the story, and this is brought in Likutei Sichas, Chelik Lamed, page 18. Okay, you do a Maimer Rechazal, but this is quoting it, but this is where I have it highlighted. So it's known, the saying of our sages, that the Torah yimid dvarim shekadmu leilam. The Torah preceded the entire world. Ki b'chol teva v'teva shebatero yesh gam perish pnimi v'ruchni. Because in every single word of the Torah, no matter how literal it looks, it seems to be talking about a world that exists. So therefore, it seems like now, since it's written in the Torah, that the world existed first. And now you have a Torah that's written about the world that happened already. And I don't know, 2,700 years later or something, there was the giving of the Torah. But yet we were taught that Torah actually preceded the world. Because every single word is actually the inner spiritual meaning. As the Torah is studied in the supernal realms, it does exist. The Torah exists in a spiritual form that angels and souls study. But they don't have to be locked in to the physical experience of the ideas discussed there. They are experienced as spiritual, I don't know what, something, ideas at least. Divorced from their physical prison, but dependent upon those physical ideas to embody spiritual ideas. These things far transcend physical matters. Then, in fact, every physical thing in this world has a spiritual source. So therefore, the physical thing is actually totally nullified as the projector is nullified to what's on the screen in the olden days. It comes out that we learn another thing. Since from God, from Besti himself, nothing bad comes. Therefore you have to say, that also these things those things in the Torah, that according to their simple meaning, in the lowest realm, how they're understood, they're things that are worthy of euphemism. They're undesirable. Maisim leitavim, not good deeds. Einshim kiyetzibah, or punishments, God forbid, and the like. Harei b'Torah kafi shehi bel yainim. But the Torah, as it exists in the supernal realm, that is the source for the letters that are written in the physical Torah that we read and interpret on a physical level also. That in the supernal realms, there's obviously nothing bad because they see that it all has a divine source, and therefore it's the will of Hashem. Therefore, these verses are interpreted in a way that reflects their existence, which is everything's good, everything's from Hashem. And the word here is used, misparshim. They're interpreted in a way that they are entirely holy and good. So in heaven, you have no problem. Peleges, Shegel. Esther's not indignant by that. She recognizes that her role is a tremendous merit. And what did she have to go through? Maybe don't cry for her in Purim because she saw the good. And I always suspected that. And here's my source. Finally, I found one. That's very validating. Thank you, Bestie. The L'chayim Dvar Rambam. To note what Rambam says, which we just learned, Ein hefresh ben timno haisa pelagish, ben lechi vayelkach l'shma Yisrael, ki ekol mepi gvura, kol teres Hashem, tmima terek deishas, kedusha, emes. It's all holy, it's all good. Good morning. So whatever, if you're talking about pelagish, shagged, or you're talking about the holiest things, you don't need to say lahavdil. If it's part of the Torah, shegel, you could say them in the same breath of vayelkach, anechi vayelkach l'shma Yisrael. It's all holy, it's all true. Then the Rabbi goes on, even though the simple meaning of these words, it's talking about a woman who was the ultimate lowlife. And can you believe the Rabbi would even say this about a person? I think she said that about, who was that name? Miriam Bas, oh, I forget. I forget his name. Her father's name. Good morning. So even though Timnah was the biggest lowlife, say she was incestuous, she brought a Malach into the world who was the source of tragedy forevermore until it's going to be eradicated and God's throne is won again. Good morning. So it's all, and that's why Purim, of course, relates to that. Because Haman was a descendant, and Haman wanted to do the dastardly holocaust of all goodness in the world. To wipe out, there will be no sign of morality in the world once we wipe out the Jews. which is the ultimate extreme from the ultimate sanctity of I am the Lord your God. God introduces us with the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai. However, this fact doesn't take away from the holiness of these letters. Okay? So even though you read it with a euphemism, yishkavena instead of yishkalena, you don't say shagged in public. That's disgraceful. Say lay, yishkavena. That's what the Torah, that's what you pronounce from the Torah. That's what you heard the Shabbos. So we're going to say timna. We're going to talk about someone, the biggest lowlife that existed at the time, the absolute opposite of the holiness of Anechi Vayelikacha. Nevertheless, that doesn't affect the holiness of these letters at all. They're written in the Torah thus. Ad shein hefresh klal. There is absolutely no difference between the sanctity, the holiness of these words about Pelegesh and I am the Lord your God. Because it's not judging the existence of Timna. It's not judging her. Just let me finish. Okay, I'm going to bring you on. Let's give this a try. We're going to do this with Chaim. If you say up top, focus, like you have a platform, say something relevant. Good morning. You're not. Hello. I have to. If you're not going to say anything.
Mark from Esslingen in Germany.
What?
I'm Markus Gundlach from Esslingen in Germany.
You're in Germany. Okay, I hope you're bringing light to Germany. Are you?
Yeah, I'm living in the southwest of Germany and don't want to disturb you.
Okay, well, it's not, I give you all the blessings in the world that you should spread godliness in the world, even in your part of the world. That's totally in with what we're talking about, bringing light into the dark environment. So I wish you good luck in that. I'm going to continue this year now. Thank you. Continue without get. Okay, that was a cool hello. Who leisha shahais betachlis yerida. So this is the exact opposite of a Naichi Valagacha. Nevertheless, in terms of the holiness, there's no difference whatsoever. Because the entire Torah is holy, pure, and good. Because it's not judging Timna. Ein hanida, and the one that is on the hot seat. That's not the Metzius of Timna. We're not challenging the fact that there was a person called Timna. But we're talking about what the Torah teaches you about her. That's what's important to us. Yes, there's a Timna in the world. We can't deny that. We might refer to it as Yishkavena instead of Yishkalena. We might call it Timna. I don't know. You might read it fast or something like that. Like we did this Shabbos by the Klolos. We read it fast in a low voice. We'll say Yishkavena instead. We'll get Shakespearean so our kids won't know what we're talking about. But in terms of the holiness of the existence of such a thing, that's not judged. The Torah is teaching you how to relate to such a thing. And this description of what is the appropriate relationship to these ideas that do exist, the way you're supposed to want to be euphemistic about them because they're not meant to be discussed openly. Proof is, when you read about it in the Torah, change the way you read it. But it doesn't deny the existence. Rather, here we're equating that with the ultimate Yerida and also in the same breath of the kloles, the curses of the Torah. So, and we're saying, you know what? Both of those, although they resonate with each other in terms of their negativity and their indignant expressions in this world that could have sire the bastard of Amalek to make this evil force in the world, nevertheless, that is something that exists. And in fact, the source of that, totally good. And if you were an angel sitting in Gan Eden, having Slurpees in the sun, you would know that would be obvious. But this takes the pnimis of Torah to bring out. That's the Alter Rebbe, and that's why the Mitteler Rebbe, his son, when he was a child, didn't hear any curses at all when his father read it. So the idea of a pelegish is also already something that's totally expressive of simply a teaching of how do you relate to such a concept. That it is totally appropriate to learn about. That's what the Torah is meant to teach you. And that's on the par with the Neichi V'Alikach Shema Yisrael. And so much more, how much more so when you're reading about the Kabbalah of these things, when you're actually learning what's going on in the way they learn it in heaven. If you actually learn that, then when we're talking about Timna, this low life, it's only a spiritual concept. So in terms of musar, of rebuke, we're supposed to say, how do I interact with such a concept? There's going to be encounter, there's going to be a billboard that I'm going to have to teach my child about. What should I do? I should say, you know what? We find the good in everything, and maybe the good here is for you to just look away, dear son, dear daughter. In the simplest level, just you look at something holy. Have a picture of the Rebbe that you're going to bump into street lamps with, looking at your iPhone picture of the Rebbe. I used to take off my glasses when I had glasses, when I was walking in Eglinton and Young, where I worked. Now I've learned some things that are just, there's a different approach now, and I've spoken about it at some length. But here it's also about this very idea. So on the simplest level, you just understand how you're supposed to relate to those things, how you're supposed to feel. It's okay to feel embarrassed around things that are embarrassing. In fact, that's good. And that brings out your essential quality of Jew is Baishanim. A Jew is of the three characteristics. One of them is to be bashful. So a Jew he finds things bashful. He's bashful about things, and that's the Torah teaches on the simplest level. But on the more deep level, learn the pneumius of the thing, and then it's just spiritual ecstasy revealed. The way the Rebbe refers to it is mikara eina ela inin ruchni. It's really from the outset, it is something spiritual, hanimtza ba'olam, that exists in the world, shekula kedusha. That's everything in this world, that the way that they see it in heaven is holiness. So when it talks about Pelegish, there was no smirk. There was no snicker at all. Some people accuse me of smirking. It's just because I find these things enjoyable. I don't find them to smirk about. And especially when I'm talking about rioting and serious things that I don't know if people like to hear politics in my crowd. I don't like politics. I prefer to talk about this. I think my crowd is also like that. Good morning, Sean. I didn't see you. Okay, catch up. You could listen to it in 2 times speed, and you'll catch up by the end. One day you'll be able to do that, I'm sure. Or 15 times speed. Why not? Find the right chemical and put some drops in your eyes, and all of a sudden you're going to be thinking 100 times faster. I don't see any problem with that. When we hack the human body, we'll make ourselves into these walking AIs. For sure it's happening. You cannot even escape this. This is what the people that we idolize, these billionaires and their vision they have of the future. They're the biggest science fiction writer. I mean, we're living science fiction. Go outside. So for science fiction is a complete reality. It's going to be part of the Gula in the biggest way, I have no doubt. Why? Just because it's the marvel of Hashem's world, and the Rebbe spoke about it in metaphysical terms, but talking about how science is going to be permeated with the recognition of godly forces, divine creative forces. Okay, so here we're saying when we're talking about the Pelegesh, Yishkolena, we're talking about something that exists. If you learn about that in heaven, you don't see anything wrong with it from the outset. It's entirely holy. Because there is no evil that emerges. This foundation is also explained according to the story. At first glance, it's difficult to understand the story that Rabbi Yud Zayin Elul tells about the Alter Rebbe reading the Klolis, the curses in the Torah, and the Mitteler Rebbe's son was cool, and then someone else reads it and he gets sick. Mesupar, it's explained. Rabbeinu Zaken Hayba Emse Kerebetera. Ba'atzmai. He himself was the Kabal Kere Pamalachas Laitza Beliazna Shama Parshas Savai, the Shama Admor and Soiwa, then Anar, Kaidim Bar Mitzvah, he was before his Bar Mitzvah, his son. Hakriya Ma'acheri heard it from someone else because his father was away. Hagmas Nefesh Me'aklolish Betecha Yasu Lakav, because him to, good morning. it caused his heart to be so embittered that at Yom Kippur Nistapik Rabbeinu Zakim Yuchal Lisanis. At that point, that his father, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, wondered whether he should even fast on Yom Kippur. It was right before his bar mitzvah, basically. Yes. Kishishalu es admorem tzoli harei b'chol shana keren barshazu anna kishabba kira hertzek nit kain calls. When father's reading, I don't hear any curses said. Delaka Aaron, so the Rebbe asks about this. Delaka Aaron derish bir. At first glance, it requires explanation. Kasher Rabbeinu Zakin karbatera b'taklis diuk. But call it tevas ve'eses im nakudas v'taimu kula b'vade nishma teichna shalakriyad kepshutai. There's also a literal level. So even though the Alter Rebbe has in mind at the time of his reading it all the good in it, it still has the simple meaning, and the simple meaning is difficult. So why is it that the Mitteler Rebbe would not have agmas nefesh, the troubled heart, because of even this father reading it when he would read it? The simple meaning of the simple interpretation you cannot get away from. So isn't that an interesting kasha? Very subtle, very nuanced. So then what does it mean? He doesn't hear the Pshut Shamikra? The Alter Rebbe, who was the author of the Shulchan Aruch, Harav, would not have that in mind also? The Rebbe, our Rebbe, is famous for taking the most literal, the Rashis, for example, the Rashi Sichos. He goes on to interpret the literal dimension in particular and showing the depth and mystical aspects within that itself, hidden within it. So the Rebbe is most famous for that, and he asked this question. Didn't the Alter Rebbe have that in mind also, and therefore it's negative? So why does the good prevail? In the Naklaus Kamufan Apostle who rak Kefisha Inyan Nilmad Lemata Ba'ilim Hapshat. I'm not Kefisha Terra Bidvarim Belyanim. Ba'ilim Shekula Kedusha She'ain La Shaikas Lemitzia Shara. Mabela gam la'inesh al ra, hine gam yan me'elu aklolas taichnam ach barak dusha ubracha. So when you're speaking about the spiritual meaning of it, so the Torah is really only hinting about through physical things, but speaking about spiritual things. It's actually speaking about the Elyanim, the supernal realm. It's just happens to be dressed up into an allegory, of course, a true allegory. And when this is understood this way, in a holy realm, there's no evil there. And not even punishments for evil. Therefore, even these curses, their teichen, their content, is only goodness and actual blessings. The Kefishim Mefarish Amr Zaken le'inyan aklalos teparshis b'kukaisai shel lefiha emes einek rak brachis. The Alter Rebbe himself says, when it appears in Chukaisai, it says, according to the truth of the matter, these are only blessings. Umeivi hatzamak zedek dugma lezedne asipar amuva b'shas the Rashbi shalach b'nei letzanayim sheniz damnu b'makemei shebi varach chuhu. So the Rashbi sends his son to get blessings from the sages. Anamhem baruchu b'lashon klala, but they blessed him with curses. V'haya mitzdarim izeh. So the son of the Rashbi, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, was very affected by this. Here it says mistar, but we've learned in other places that he wasn't worried about it. He knew it'd be good. He just didn't understand the interpretation, how this was intended for good. He knew it would be good because everything had to be good in such a. It was a blessing for him. That's why his father sent him to get a blessing. So he trusted it was a blessing. And one interpretation was that they just wanted his father to give a blessing also by reassuring him and explaining to him the reason that itself was the source of his ability to turn that into blessings, because that's what they're meant to be, just an expression of a blessing that is too high to be revealed in a regular way, and now it was transformed into revealed good. These are entire blessings, and the Rashbi explained it to him. Therefore, when the Alter Rebbe read in the Torah, okay, We're going back to the story. Haya nishma b'kriyase. It was heard in his reading at Admor and Soy. Taken Bereishit Boruch k'fisha Torah v'deberes bel yanim. He understood the meaning as it was in the supernal realm. Shesham gam Bereishit Teichra yimikara inyan shekula teva bracha. That there, the rebuke itself, in its main, the most recognizable feature of it is that it's just good and blessing. I don't see how that answers the question. It seems to ask the question again. So let me think about that in a second. Let me just finish it. And this will be sweetened. The explanation that I just gave will be sweetened with it. What the Alter Rebbe says on the terms Keira b'Torah that you call in the Torah. Maybe this is the hint that will help us explain it. That by delving into Torah learning, he's calling to his bestie in heaven, Lavoyalov, to come to him. You're saying tate or something, whatever in your language. Like you call your bestie, Shiavoyalov, but ben katna la'aviv. He's calling your bestie to come to him, or like a child calling to his father, Lavoyalov, to come to him. Liyasi my betzav tzachada, to be with him in one union, tzav savachibor, to connect. But Ken Beinin, so too in our case, that through the laning, the reading from the Torah of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Torah, Kara the Himshik HaTorah Kafishi B'Yanim, he called to God and drew down into the Torah the way the Torah is learnt in the supernal realm, when everything is revealed good, and brought that into the literal interpretation. So that from the outset, even in the physical world, you see that it's from the outset, the shagged of life, when you feel shagged or hagged or distraught for whatever reason, to transform that experience itself to something that's empowering. So he's revealing how it is in Elyon Etzel HaKadosh Baruch Hu by Basti himself. The Sham Lo Yigor Hara, that there is no evil that emerges. Okay, that is your Zayin Elul. And there's also very cool yesterday's, when it says the Machshava Keduma Da'ach that I was referring to yesterday on Friday. Good morning. I was referring to on Friday, and I didn't feel like I had a good, at least after 3 beers, Ak was a little elusive. It sounded like its name, Ak. What is it? Adam Kadmon. But here it talks about Machshava Keduma Da'ach, and we have some interpretation. So I think on Shabbos itself, when this came out, it's meant to be read on this Shabbos, Tes Zayin Elul. It's worthwhile going over this beautiful arichas on it. I don't know how much we'll get. No, it's still early. Maybe we'll get to some of that. But I just want to read you that Hayom Yom first, okay? So it's Tes Zayin Elul. Oh, the Zayins look like Vavs. That's so confusing. So Rabbeinu Azach and Perish and Maimer. So the Alter Rebbe again quoted here. He interpreted the Maimer, Kol HaMakayim Nefesh Achas Misrael. Whoever sustains the life of one Jew, Ki'ilu Kayim Olam Mala, as if he sustained an entire world, a full world. Eifayidin Darfman Kukin. When we're talking about a Jew, we must see that Jew. So here it has to do with the interpretation, the Tikkun Seifrim, the Pelegish, the low life of the world, how you immediately find some good about even that. Especially in the Torah, obviously it's talking. And so we saw how that is when you realize that the Torah is calling out to Besti in heaven, and therefore bringing that into the world. You bring it how the Torah is with Hashem, which is all good. And now you transform the physical world itself. So here you're doing that again. When you're encountering another Jew and you realize that his well-being is an entire world, and this also resonates with that other idea about the exclusivity, existential exclusivity. That's what I'm going to call that. And I know you're going to have to look in your philosophy books. That's like that's the way my philosophy studies were, with big fancy terms like that. Not terms like dim sum, which were much cooler. If Yidin darf men cooking, we have to cook a Yid. We have to look at a Jew. As he is in the primordial thoughts of Adam Kadmon. So there's this perfect spiritual being called primordial man, that before this perfection of spirit was created, there was a primordial thought that allowed that to come into being. That is the thought that is the source of this perfection. And that's how you have to see a Jew. That the very soul that God consulted with about creating the world is the one that he's casting into the world. Good morning. In Machshava Hakduma Da'ak, you see a Jew as he is in the very most primordial thought of all creation. On Darton State Yeder Neshama, and there every Jew stands Mitteler Rebbe was kommen areis von hier, with all of the descendants that come out from the person. And I take it to mean here also ideologically, if you don't have any children, God forbid, then you should see the people you encounter as your children. We learned that from Avram and Sarah. But also here in terms of generations, all the generations that come from a person you're also affecting. Parenting is generational, okay? So when you affect someone who's a parent, you just affected all of his descendants, hers. Eladeris was kommen areis von hier, bis Moshiach, until Moshiach comes. And what happens then? The Gael Tzedek, the righteous Redeemer. And as men tut in a teva, and when you do a kindness to another Jew, tut men a teva at the al neshamas at safe kolders. You do a kindness to all the souls for the end of time, to the end of all generations. So I don't know if you guys want to have a share. We can do this whole 2 pages in a bit. It's pretty good. So I think I just want to read the whole thing, make it easier on my my tired creative mind, just to read something, because this is, I think, understandable and very cool, and it's about the same idea we were talking about before. Yishkalena, yishkavena. Put a euphemism in it. Teach your child that there's. Why do these people do this in the billboards? What are you supposed to tell your 5-year-old child? That it's completely inappropriate for him to take away his youth by seeing something that is just meant to be in the bedroom? Why do they put it in? I think they actually took that down. I haven't seen that in Yorkdale recently. The Victoria's Secret had to have like a humongous thing that you don't want your children to see. It's just stay a child for a bit longer. You know, you'll use that to have a very healthy approach to these things when it is appropriate. So you need that time where things are kept from children. Okay, you can have societies that have no children and you do whatever you want. I don't care. I just personally don't. Do whatever you want. Keep children safe. Keep it in your bedroom. So that Torah teaches you that in the simplest level here, but also how you approach these in a more mature way, you realize that there is a place for everything in the world. Find out what the Torah wants you to use that thing. Don't lock it off. Okay, so you do a Maimer HaMishnah. It is known, this is the Hayom Yom HaMavuar, which I love to quote from because they just organize this research so well and they bring the original context for everything to do with the Hayom Yom. Very good work. Din in the Fashis, it says in the Mishnah, when you talk about capital cases, you're talking about the blood of the person and his descendants forevermore after him. We learn this from the fact that the first man was created as a unique creation, just one of him. There wasn't like 100 of him. To teach you that whoever murders one soul amongst the Jewish people, mala alav kasev, it's considered, the Torah considers it keilu avad mala, as if the person eradicated in a full world. But nefesh achas v'Yisrael, and whoever sustains one soul amongst the Jewish people, mala alav kasev keilu kaim olam mala, it's as if he sustained the entire world. A perish pnimish, who the inner meaning here, the Hasidic interpretation is shal Yehudit sarik lahabit, that regarding a Jew, you have to gaze upon him like if not as he is here before us. You do not see the blemishes on someone. Why? Because it's merely a reflection of your own blemishes. Have no blemishes inside, and you will see only good in another person. And in fact, it goes the other way too. So do this service, spiritual service of seeing only good in someone else. To Tzarich Lahabit, you must look not as a person is before you. You think that that's what's important, to judge him as he is now. No. Yes, the Torah judges someone as they are now, not for their future wrongdoings. That's a positive thing also. So here, when you're looking at someone in the present tense, you're only supposed to see the good. Not as they are, as they are. And look at Fishu be Yishersha. You're supposed to see him as he is in his source. Why? Because from your perspective, it's you and Bestie. There's only you and God. So God creates this, and that is the source for this person. So it has a divine source. Whatever person you are tempted to see them as they are before you, with all their imperfections revealed before your eyes. No, you're supposed to see them as their source and Bestie himself. The Makamaki Rishon, the very most primordial first origin shall Seder Ishtalshus of all of the spiritual source of creation. Shisham hu be'emes nimsa ba'ifin shalayla malet. For there certainly is a full world. That person's an entire world. When you go and riot and throw people's tables across the thing and make them feel terrified, that's a whole world you did that to, God forbid. How horrific is that? Till the end of eternality, that's how important each person is. Therefore, when you do a good to a Jew, you have to see it as a generational kindness. So the first part of the source for this is explained by the Rebbe Riyatz, who's the author of these words from the Yom Yom, to explain the great love of and the devotion of the Mitteler Rebbe to every one of his Chassidim, to the extent that the master himself, the Mitteler Rebbe, wrote entire volumes, a volume for an individual. It says, opening the eyes of the blind. It was written for one specific Baal Tshuva. And this is the entire story written about him in the preface to Bekeach Ivrim, which is hard to read. It's a person who had inappropriate lusts and how to deal with that, and is prescribed spiritual medicine to deal with that. Kan muva, if I remember correctly. Kan muva piskam ze, because I can't find it now. I took it to the summer cottage environment one time, and I think I left it there because I couldn't carry that. But kan muva piskam, and I left in the shul. So someone's going to find that one day and learn it. It's going to be, wow, I cannot believe what this is talking about. Kan muva piskam ze biur rachav shel admor emtzoi. Here, this is explained in a lengthy explanation from the Mitteler Rebbe. So let's see what it says. That was the introduction. Yeduim lanu sipurim la'asaras hamarim gedel hatani neisai shal kveit kvush admor emtzoi v'matzavim haruchni shal chasidim his Yanasa. It's known the great interest that the Mitteler Rebbe had about the spiritual state of the Chassidim. Shahaisa his aniya nais pratis kav hamachanech umadrich as b'nei yechide the simas lev miyuchada. That it was like the sensitivity that a teacher has to his only student. His only child is his only student. And how much attention he would give such a class. Dushas Admor Zaken, Hamis Bishnas Tafken Nun, Haid Dushas Admor Bnayam Admor Mtsoi, as had Drachas had breaking a Yeshim Liosna, Vagam Lavle, Bexuvi Mim Elu Asmuchim Al Shulchan of Isayam Chamesayan, Sayam, Haid Dushas Admor Mtsoi, Asak Bazeh, Tanines Gdela. He was to write to those who lived off the support of their parents and learned Torah, and the Mitteler Rebbe was charged with the mission by his father, was giving him this mission to be concerned about their spiritual welfare. His father said, which is Admor Emtzoi, Im Machainachav, Hayanaichem Gam Ziknech Sinma Rishen Shal Hait Bush's Admor Avim have Rabbeinu Zakim Hait Bush's Rabbeinu Amtsoli, Dvar Bis Rakshas Delu Darni Zimul Lavavay Akdesha, Hakadesh, Vishvikas and Nefesh Mamish Binin, Rachitas Havedib Shbalev. So one of the Fabringans that the Mitteler Rebbe had with his people in his charge, as well as the elder Hasidim, who were devotees of the Alter Rebbe's, the Mitteler Rebbe's father. And he spoke to them with such impassioned terms, he was pouring out his soul literally before them, regarding the importance of devotion of one's heart in prayer. Tfilas, lemtinas, patient prayer, masha asaration adir al Hashem. And this had a tremendous impression on those who heard him for bring this way. You know, make this impassioned plea for them to really care about their spiritual service and prayer. The Mitteler Rebbe did not have a good respiratory system from his youth. And it affected him, his health, to speak with such passion. Yet he did. So it was not time. His father's nachli. He was sick for 2 days after this. And they came to visit him in his state. They asked him, why did you speak so impassioned? To risk your health to do that? You should have been careful. Kachek would Bush's Admor, Hey Shiloi, Rabbeinu Amtsoi, Hamis Allah Hadrachas Havrechim. So when he was charged, when the Mitteler Rebbe was charged by his father with a mission to be concerned about the spiritual well-being of the Chassidim, Eifid and the young men, Eifid the Darf men cooking via state in Machshavah Duma De'ach. You have to see a Jew as he is in the very source of all creation. And from this I learned 4 things, and at least the first one to me is the focus. That's why I have highlighted here. The soul, as it is in the primordial thought, it is at the level of son, child. And when it descends to go into a body, he b'madregas eved. That's you call the soul slave. So there is this narrative ongoing in Chassidus about the relationship between the prince, those that have privilege, the ben, and those who see themselves as a slave, the eved, which here is talking about, in terms of its significance, the status of the soul as it exists within a body is called a slave. Since when it comes down, the soul comes down below, you have to see it as it is in the primordial thought itself. Every single soul is capable of achieving their true identity of a son or daughter to God, also as that person exists below. So as you exist, totally one with Besti, in the highest Kabbalistic level, the one God consulted with in creation, as the Rebbe points out in his Sichos, that is called son, daughter, ben. So to free ourselves from slavery, that means to be in touch with your true identity as a child of God, the ben of God, and not the slave. That allows you to overcome the limitations of your body, which has to be exposed to risks of health. So the Mitteler Rebbe recognized the importance of this, and also the generations to come. Therefore, especially the young people, right? People that are starting families, he was sacrificing his own health for them. To make this journey from slave to child of God, or bestie, we said before. We said that 2 things are synonymous to us. And you have to see another person as they are, as a child of God. This shows you that you have the power to actually realize your true identity. And what does this mean? This is the superhero vort, that every Jew is the superhero that they want to be. That they have the power, they have essential core powers that can actually affect everything to do with your interaction, good morning, with things in your life. That's called Avedis HaBirurim. You encounter things that are relevant to you, and you're dealing with those things. You now have the power to hurdle all that. And as the soul comes down into this world, from that source in the primordial origin, the soup that you come from, they give you whatever powers you need, Lavedis Barim, to succeed in your encounters with those things. However, all of this, the fact that your soul is at the level of a child of God, and that it has all this power, all this entitlement, hu ben helam, that is concealed. And it's our job to reveal the Esther, the Hastir, that concealment of God's face in Esther, that you want to call her Shegel. Shegel Hazais Haisa Esther, the Malvin tells us. That was Esther in this pasuk in Nehemiah 2:6. Wow. So really, the slave, the Pelegesh, this Shegel that was captured in the minaret, we were talking about the citadel of King Shlomo Melech, totally enslaved to this king of Tibus, King Solomon, Ecclesiastes, someone who would call their book Ecclesiastes. She was trying to escape to the simple shepherd boy, the simple shepherd of all the hosts of heaven. So the Mitteler Rebbe was prepared to endanger his own health because this was going to be something that was being affecting young people, to inspire them to realize their true identity, how they could overcome every issue in whatever they're going to encounter in the world, and specifically the lowest things. You have the power to overcome them. And so the neshama, as it is in its primordial thing, that's where it has all these powers to do everything to affect the world and overcome its encounters in the world. Even when it comes to you just have to reveal it. The fact that this source of your soul is actually present there in this primordial soup, even the future souls that are going to come out to you. In other words, your role as a parent, or whatever legacy you leave behind, are also dependent on that. Until the end of all the challenge of encountering the physical world, until when God's going to completely eradicate on any inappropriate temptation from the world, then it's going to be over. That's game's over. Now we celebrate whatever we did accomplish. Even though everyone has free choice, every soul, in terms of how they approach their charge to serve God, the beginning of your service is dependent upon the cause, be'ilasa, k'may av uben, just like a father and son. That at first a father is gentle with his child. No. He's giving merit to his child. The father at first brings merit to his child, and afterwards, zacha, I think means like zeicha instead of zach meaning pure. Afterwards, and then afterwards it could be that the son outshines the father himself. You empowered the child through a good education, and now, okay, so here the point is that you were given some power to begin the whole operation. Whatever inspiration you ever woke up with, be thankful for that, because that's setting everything in motion. That's analogous to the way a father educates a child. It starts with the benevolence of a father to a child. So here we're saying that's the analogy here of recognizing the source of the Jew rather than what you see before your eyes. We made that clear distinction. You don't see the Jew as he is, as it descends and goes into a body, and therefore you don't see all the blemishes. So the soul as it exists in this origin, there it has in general all of the service that the soul below is going to do. All of the power for that exists already in the power bank above. And in whatever manner, whether to give or to receive. And the truth is that both come together as one. Everybody's always receiving from someone greater and giving to someone that needs to be given something. The kol prate inyane avoidase. And at every level, it depends upon whatever is rooted in your very source as it's rooted in Bestie himself. So that is the source for all of your future success. Okay, you have free choice, but the power to do that comes from the first push you get. You have the choice to keep that in motion or not, but there's an advantage on your side. And this statement that you got to see a Jew as he exists in his primordial source. It's not just about when you encounter somebody else. This is talking about yourself. And I've had this debate with people before, and I don't like to put people down. But I've had this debate, so it's a reality. And I think that these people are in educational positions, and this is not the Rebbe's approach. So if they're representing the Rebbe, they really have to understand that this is the only identity that we don't give multiple choices about where you go to the washroom. There's one identity in Chassidus. That is machshava gduma gam ki'im gam al atzmai. The Rebbe tells us that we have to see this also about ourselves. I think this is the Friedrich Rebbe. You too have to see yourself as you exist, completely one with Bestie. Completely as you're one with Bestie. That means you have all the resources to do what you know you could do. It doesn't mean if you're sometimes receiving and getting, you're in training mode, and it doesn't mean that sometimes you're in mode of helping others. It makes no difference. It all comes from one source. There's a time to learn and a time to teach. I'm sure that's one of God. Yeah. How many are there? 24? So you have to see yourself that way. That is your identity, and you have to see, you cannot be confused by Tanya telling you that you are shtik yetzahara. If you think that's the correct interpretation of the Tanya, I'll debate you whenever you want. No, give me 20 minutes to prepare. So that the Friedrich Rebbe is telling us about the Mitteler Rebbe, about when he contemplated what he was taught, that he also had to see himself as the source he has in heaven, in Maksham Dumedak. Bisvadis bihit udas nishmasi shenimsro lo keshi yarda lislabesh begufi. Acknowledging my soul that's given over to be invested within a body. Good morning. When it comes to me, in all further generations, and this great charge of a mission that is incumbent upon me, about those who I'm educating and the descendants that person has. How could I therefore, even though it was a health risk, the Mitteler Rebbe said, could he withhold his concern for his own well-being when everything depends on his ability to inspire people, to recognize their true identity. So the Mitteler Rebbe was willing to have Mesiras Nefesh, literally, self-sacrifice, risking his very health to get this message across, even if it's just going to be a legacy. And he won't be able to continue teaching that very message. Just to die for that itself was worthwhile for the Mitteler Rebbe. Okay, he didn't die for it, but he risked it. But Ken Yeshnam Oid Kama Sipurim Al Meidim Al Eitzim Gadol Has Ani Nusai B'Mesiras Gdela B'Hanegel Achol Chassid Im Kusha B'Frat Im Kenei Fay La Yiplak Im Ksav Maimer Prati Avor Ish Prati. So don't be surprised that the Rebbe wrote specific volumes just for individuals, because he would kill himself for another person. A little bit more. Hakar Miktavay Haklali Shalid Voices Dushas Admir Emtsoi Keshenis Yashiv Libavich. Those who read this open letter that the Mitteler Rebbe wrote when he was living in Lubavitch, Vishnas Tafkuf Ayin Dalid, Raya Es Ha'esh Halaki, Haleihet Ba'avas Yisrael. You could see the divine fire that burned within him for love of a fellow Jew. V'hadrak Chasam V'kiruvam La'aveda Shebelev, in reaching out to guiding them in their service of God, in Bidvekis, Kvias Itim Latera, in devoting times to learn Torah V'kima Mitzvahs Beregesh, to enthusiastically learn Torah and fulfill mitzvahs, mitgefil, with tangible experience, Dechayas Pnimi, in an internal way. Okay, that is that whole segment. I thought that was really cool. So anything you could do to inspire someone to live with their true identity, and probably the hint is that the power to do that the best is to do it in yourself first. That allows you to be someone that can really inspire other people. If you yourself are shining dim sum with whatever glory you're meant to bring to the world, if you do that, you will inspire someone else. And when you give over with, or even when you're learning with passion. Here we learned that the both aspects are reflective of one's divine source. And the empowerment to do that in the ultimate way is granted from your divine source. So you just have to sort of keep the ball rolling. There is this initiative that starts with the chinuch, just like a child gets whatever, hopefully some beneficial education. Good morning. That too, your Father in heaven starts you off with a charge, Madhyani in the morning. It's all happening. And in every level, that same rhythm exists. When you're first shot out of your slingshot out of heaven into this physical world, you have to recognize that you're still connected with your source, and that's what's zapping your way through the world in successes of a good Bach.